Quitman, Arkansas, population 733. A sleepy little town with a long and mundane history, overall about as unassuming of a locale as you could come across, unless you speak to one of its residents. While Quitman may seem like just another humble little howl to pass through, the townsfolk have heard and perpetuated rumors of their residential restless spirits for decades. Quitman wasn't always a quiet little town. In fact, it has much more history than almost any other community in north central Arkansas. During the Civil War, it was a popular place for men to enlist in the army, and until 1870, it was a major trading center and an important crossroads, attracting a wide array of individuals. Quitman was a halfway point for those traveling from Memphis to Little Rock, and its early success led to the construction of some large and beautiful Victorian-era homes. One of the finest homes in Quitman at the turn of the 20th century had become steeped in hearsay, despair, and tragedy over the past 130 years. The home located at 65 Mulberry Street, Quitman's very own epicenter of evil. Some of the earliest known residents of 65 Mulberry were the Jackson family. Benjamin Jackson was the primary owner of the residence, alongside his wife, who tragically passed away soon after their move. She was only 28 years old. They had a surviving son, Joseph, who lived with Benjamin for years after his mother's early passing. However, Joseph also died tragically early at the young age of 21. Several Quitman residents had claimed to see a young-looking apparition donning World War I-era clothing, staring out of the windows of the Mulberry home. Many who believe these claims speculate that it's the ghost of Joseph Jackson. However, Joseph is only a minor player in this tale. Things took a turn for the worse many years later. After grieving, Benjamin Jackson moved on from 65 Mulberry, following the early deaths of his wife and son. The home remained empty for many years. That is until Floyd and Aline Bettis moved in around 1951. The couple was childless for many years, but after settling into their new home, they finally had a son, Gerald Floyd Bettis, born in 1954. From a very early age, it was apparent that Gerald was a difficult child. He exhibited strange behaviors and had a streak of acting out. Locals stated that his parents were good people, but Gerald was a brat, vicious and cruel. He had major difficulties in school. Kids would constantly pester him or take things away from him. It's said that he was frequently aggressive and aggravated, yet seemed to revel in all of the negative attention that he received. One of the most unusual behaviors included collecting a large number of stray cats and dogs. He had so many that the Bettis family eventually expanded their house in order to provide room for all of them. And this is how Gerald initially received his nickname, Dog Boy. However, what appeared to be a dejected and outcast teen seeking comfort in animals was much more heartbreakingly sinister. Gerald was torturing the strays that he collected. Only his closest neighbors had any suspicion as to what was actually going on. They reportedly could hear the animals howling soon after Gerald would take them in. Gerald Bettis' cruelty didn't end there though. It extended to his own parents. He supposedly held them hostage and kept them virtually imprisoned in the upstairs portion of their house. He would feed them, but only when he decided it was time for them to eat. By the time that Gerald was a young adult, he towered over his elderly parents at 6'4" and weighing close to 300 pounds. It was reported that he would regularly beat up his father and even threw him out of an upstairs window at one point in his late teens. Despite being in his 70s at the time of the incident, the elderly Bettis hung onto the ledge until the local police arrived to escort him to safety. Floyd Bettis later died in 1981 after suffering from an illness in his home. However, it's rumored amongst Quitman residents that Gerald killed his father by pushing him down the stairs. Residents who knew Gerald in his later years mostly feared him for his outright viciousness. One was quoted as saying, "If you had ever seen his eyes, they seemed to glow at night." In the early 1980s, Aline Bettis fell and broke her hip, which landed her in the hospital. There, she had admitted to her nurse that her son was slapping her around and would threaten her to stay quiet about his mistreatment. Soon after, Aline was placed in Adult Protective Services and removed from 65 Mulberry permanently. Shortly after, Gerald Bettis was arrested on a combination of drug charges and testimony from his mother. He was placed in prison in the late 1980s and died of a drug overdose. Dogboy's death was confirmed in May 1988 at the age of 34. It is widely believed by Quitman residents that the angry spirit of Gerald Bettis remains attached to 65 Mulberry Street. Several other families have taken up residence in the home since the Bettis' incident in the 1980s, and every single one has moved on, claiming to be uprooted by blatant paranormal activity. Tony Weaver and his wife lived at 65 Mulberry for a couple of years before they finally had enough. They claimed that the most common occurrence were lights that would turn on by themselves on a frequent basis. Mrs. Weaver also recalled, "One time, pennies floated down the stairwell from the upstairs part of the house. The coins stopped and fell to the floor all at once, right in front of me." Alongside this, apparitions would infrequently reveal themselves, but disappear completely after rounding a corner. Others who have stayed at 65 Mulberry Street report similar events, such as toilets flushing by themselves, recliners rocking in place, or objects randomly crashing down without interference. When Tony Weaver had the house up for sale, a prospective buyer brought her dog along to check out the property. However, the animal absolutely refused to go inside, perhaps sensing the lingering presence of Dogboy. Ed Munderland of Little Rock, Arkansas, was tasked with the job of remodeling the home, a project that had spanned several months. He claimed several unexplainable incidents that happened to him, and that he has seen things that defy his rational thought process. When he pulled into the driveway of the house one evening, he saw a man looking down at him from the upper windows. He claims to have had a much more up-close and personal experience with what he assumes is the ghost of Gerald Bettis. He stated, "He was this huge, weird-looking man, with long brown hair, creepy eyes, and great big arms and hands. He was holding a cat in a rear sunroom." He says that the apparition walked right in front of him, glaring the whole time before disappearing into the hallway. Quitman locals also claim to have caught glimpses of both Joseph Jackson and Dogboy, peering at them through one of the home's many windows when they passed by. In 2005, the Central Arkansas Society for Paranormal Research, also known as CASPER, investigated the house led by researcher Karen Schillings. "We went there on 2 different occasions," she said. "The first time, we noticed cold spots, 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the ambient temperature of the house. A very sensitive electromagnetic field detector was used to pick up all kinds of electromagnetic readings, and we picked up an energy force that had no explanation." Schillings also reported that the team tracked an entity through the kitchen area, where one of the team members felt like someone had touched him, and that when they went outside to retrieve equipment from the car, there is a face peering down at them from the upper windows. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, this sleepy Arkansas town has had all the tragic ingredients for one hell of an urban legend. Let me know in the comments below. Do you believe in ghosts? Is it possible that Dogboy's evil spirit is still tethered to 65 Mulberry Street? Or are those who claim to have seen paranormal activity just mistaken? Thanks for watching and stay tuned for next week's mystery.